We're going to see what kind of trouble we can get in today, upgrading a Jeep with Fox. I'm Tim Johnson. You're watching Shop Tour Reviews. This is the Fox Factory Race Series Stabilizer ATS 2.0. What's ATS? Adjustable through shaft. As you can see here, the shaft doesn't just go in like a typical shock or stabilizer would do. It actually passes all the way through. We also have some adjustability in this. So when you're going to oversized tires, doing a lot of off-roading, this is going to help a ton. We'll explain more. We'll also take a closer look, but let's dive in and install this stabilizer. Now we're installing it on a 2020 Jeep Wrangler. Specifically, this is a four-door Wrangler. Pretty much stock, but the anticipation is to add the big wheels and tires later. And we know one of the weak points is that steering stabilizer. So we want a little more firmness when we're off-road, so that stabilizer is going to do it. Now, what's that through shaft going to do? Well, that's going to enable you to get that same sensitivity that you would have, or that same control you would have, by using two stabilizers, two of your typical shock stabilizers, but then you're having to do quite a bit of fabrication to make those dual stabilizers work. Also, you run into room issues. Well, this is going to use our factory mount points. We're going to use this plate here, very easy installation, and once we get it on there, then we have some adjustability with 24 clicks. This little screw right here is going to control with 24 different clicks, so you get 24 different points of adjustability, and that's going to set that firmness that we feel in the steering. So if we're driving off-road, we want a little more firmness, so higher on the click count. And by the way, going up is going to be clockwise and going down is counterclockwise. So if we're driving down the road, we want nice, easy steering, so we'll be on that lower click count. And then when we're off-roading, obviously we want a little more firmness in that steering, so we can add that to it. So let's get to it. All right, so first thing we want to do, we want to make sure, and after crawling under the vehicle, that we have this plate that's going to be on here oriented. And you can turn this so it's not critical, but if you kind of get everything mocked up the way it's going to go on the truck, or the way it's going to go on the Jeep, makes it a little easier. These Allen heads are meant to be torqued at 12 foot-pounds and red Loctite applied. That's why we wanted to mock everything up, make sure that we had the plate on correctly, and put these on kind of on the bench before we put it under there, make it a little easier. So, going to put this on, put some red Loctite on it, and get these installed.
For some reason there was something on it.
Whoa. So we actually had our bracket on backwards. Go ahead. We actually had our bracket on backwards, but now we're took it back off and put it on the correct way. So we're putting our Loctite back on our Allen heads and getting that cinched down. And on this side here, and we'll show this again once we get under the Jeep, but basically you have a thick and a thin bushing, and bushing. And the thick one is going to go on the bottom, and the thin one is going to go on the top. And you'll see why here in one moment. So let's go ahead and get this installed. Okay, so as you can see here, here's the existing factory stabilizer, and we're going to take off these larger fasteners are going to be 18 millimeter, and some of these smaller ones I believe are 15s, maybe even smaller than that. They could be 13 millimeter right up here, and we'll go ahead and take those out, and then we'll install the new one. We're going to start here on the outside of the stabilizer, so toward the outside wheel here, which is the passenger side, 18 millimeter. Okay, so we really don't have to take off this this other 18 millimeter. We can just take off the 13 millimeters there and the two 13 millimeters that are up here. And there we have it. Okay, so we're gonna go thick bushing on the bottom, thin bushing on the top. Factory bolt back in. So now we've got all the bolts, all the fasteners started, and you can see again, we're using all the factory mounts and even the factory bolts. There's pretty tight clearances on this mount, which is a good thing. So make sure all your bolts are started before you start tightening them down. So we've got all of them started, and you also want to make sure that your adjustment screw is pointed out here, because that really doesn't help you if it's pointed on the back side. So now it's easy to get to with a flathead screwdriver right there from the front of the Jeep. So now we can tighten all these down and we'll be good to go. So we had our screw set back to 0 so that we could actually move this arm if we needed to. Easier to move that way. And so it's back down to 0. And so we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can actually feel the detents in these clicks. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's halfway. We're going to leave that halfway and see what we get from there for just your typical street driving, if you will. But let us crank this thing up and we'll turn it lock to lock and see what happens here. No slop.
No slop whatsoever. Dude, it feels much firmer. Like, it feels like it's in the road better. Like,
yeah.
It's tracking down the road like it should be versus moving around. The front end feels heavier, like it's got resistance to the road, but not heavier to the feel. It just feels more one piece than it did before.
Yeah.
Nothing's loose. There's a huge difference on the bumps.
So in those potholes, you're not... Yeah, it's not trying to jerk the wheel out of your hand. It's not giving you any feedback.
I don't feel them in the wheel whatsoever.
Yeah. It's dampening that.
Absolutely. Feels like a different vehicle. This used to be when you would just barely move the steering wheel, it would track on the road really quick and almost darty. Now it's much more firm, much more smooth. Just feels higher, way higher quality than factory. It's not pulling out of my hands. It's not bouncing around the front end where I'm having to overcorrect. I'm not having to do any of that. It's just dampening everything I'm hitting, and I don't feel it in the steering wheel. That's what's so amazing. You would hit bumps before like this, and it would almost feel like the front end's bouncing off the road again. It feels more responsive.
You just get resistance, but it's not like you're going, oh my goodness, it's kind of a pain.
It's not a constant resistance at all. It's more fluid resistance.
Yeah.
Before, with a stock dampener on there, it felt like the front end was rattling all the time going over bumps, and it doesn't feel that way at all now. You don't hear anything. Very solid. Very smooth. It almost drive itself.
Yeah, so we're hitting all kind of bumps, and it's still tracking. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
This FOX Stabilizer was a really simple install on this Jeep Wrangler. It's going to be the same on the Gladiator as well. I believe it's 18 and up are all going to be the same. But very simple install. And also we really like the fact that we took off a factory stabilizer and installed the FOX race application right there on the same factory mounts using the same factory hardware. In fact, we didn't even have to use this through bolt because of the new bracket that's up there. But very simple install, and it worked quite effectively. You saw our ride along there where Tim was actually talking. Yes, that's the other Tim, not me, Tim. But anyway, and he has a lot of knowledge from, we've done a lot of sports car and race car stuff together, as well as done some off-roading. So he has an understanding of the feel in the wheel and the feel in the seat, if you will. Now, I will be honest, this Jeep is actually his wife's Jeep that she daily drives, but they also play on the weekends, things like that. And in anticipation for going with nicer wheels and bigger tires, they wanted to get this front end situation fixed because they had a kind of a shimmy in the front end that she was starting to notice, and he knew, hey, it's a better time now to go ahead and install the stabilizer, and then let's install the wheels and tires, then do a front end alignment, kind of get ahead of the game, if you will, with the stabilizer. And then they're setting up the wheels and tires, as well as doing the front end alignment with the stabilizer already in place. But major difference in drive quality, just a lot firmer feel in the wheel. And that was middle of the road. I think we went 12 clicks in, which there's 24 clicks, so you're halfway in. Now, price on this, on the one we installed, was $449. Like I mentioned, I mean, this is probably an hour install, and that's jacking it up and everything. You know, that's start to finish. You might have 2 hours in it, but only if you're really novice to it and not sure what you're doing at all, which in that case, maybe you shouldn't be doing it. But with, I would say, just middle of the road, novice understanding of mechanic skills, installing the stabilizer is piece of cake. Hey, check it out for yourselves from ridefox.com. Hey, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you don't mind, would you hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't done so already? And by the way, if you hated our video, then give us a thumbs down. But would you let us know in the comments why? Have a great day and keep smiling.